The sky over Lagos was a dull gray, heavy with clouds that wept slowly over the restless city. On a bustling street in Yaba, traffic groaned under the weight of the morning rush, horns blaring in impatience. Amid the chaos, a young woman stood on the sidewalk, rain soaking through her worn dress and slippers that barely clung to her feet. Her name was Emily Carter. In her trembling arms, she held her baby, Grace, wrapped in a faded cotton shawl that did little to keep out the chill. Emily's lips quivered as she whispered, "Please, anything for my baby." Her voice, though soft, carried the ache of too many sleepless nights and too many empty meals. Baby Grace whimpered faintly, her cry weak from hunger. Emily's eyes scanned the faces walking past her. Some stared briefly before looking away. Others didn't bother to notice her at all. Still, she remained rooted to the spot, as if hope itself had pinned her there. Two young men stood by a nearby newspaper stand, watching her. "She's just trying to scam people," one of them muttered. "I've heard some women even borrow babies to beg." Emily heard the words, but said nothing. She simply rocked Grace gently, shielding her from the rain with her body. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "Mummy will find help, I promise." But deep inside, she wasn't sure. Still, something told her, just hold on a little longer. Not far from where she stood, a sleek black SUV crept through the rain-soaked traffic. Seated in the back was Jonathan Blake, a 36-year-old tech billionaire and founder of Blake Core Technologies, one of Nigeria's most successful startups turned international conglomerates. This morning, he was headed for a high-stakes meeting with foreign investors that could expand his company across West Africa. He had barely glanced out of the window all morning until now. His eyes locked on Emily. The rain, the baby, the quiet desperation in her posture had hit something in him he didn't expect. He leaned forward, frowning. "Stop the car," he said sharply. The driver, startled, glanced back. "Sir?" "Pull over, right now." The car eased to a stop by the sidewalk. Jonathan didn't wait for an umbrella. He stepped out, letting the rain soak his designer suit as he walked toward the woman whose world was crumbling. Emily didn't notice him at first. She was too busy humming a broken lullaby into baby Grace's ear, her voice cracking as much from cold as from despair. The rain had begun to ease, but her dress was already soaked through, and her legs trembled beneath her. When she finally looked up, a tall man stood before her, blocking the gentle drizzle like a human shield. He was wearing a dark gray suit, soaked now, but stood calm and composed. Emily's heart skipped. Was he going to ask her to move? Shout at her for being in the way? But when he spoke, his voice was gentle. "Good morning," he said. His British accented English was polished, but his eyes were kind. She blinked, confused. Morning, sir," she stammered. He glanced at the baby. "What's her name?" "Grace," Emily replied, almost in a whisper. Jonathan stepped forward slightly, still watching the tiny baby wrapped close to her mother. "Has she eaten today?" Emily's lips pressed together. "No, sir, not since yesterday morning." "And you?" She looked away ashamed. "I just want something for her. I'm fine." Jonathan was quiet for a moment. Then with a firm but calm voice, he said, "Come with me." Emily hesitated. Her legs wanted to move, but her mind raced with fear. Who was this man? Why did he care? Could she trust him? But then she looked at Grace, whose lips were dry and face pale. She had to try. She nodded slowly. Jonathan led her gently to the waiting SUV. The driver stepped out and opened the door, glancing quickly at Emily, his eyes full of silent questions. She climbed in, careful not to leave a wet stain on the leather seats. She held Grace tighter, her heart thudding against her ribs. Jonathan slid in beside her, giving her space. From the front seat, the driver watched her in the rearview mirror but said nothing. The air inside the SUV was cold and smelled faintly of leather and cologne. Emily looked down at Grace. Her little fingers had stopped twitching. She was sleeping again, but too weakly. Jonathan reached into the armrest and pulled out a clean hand towel. He offered it to Emily. "Here, for the baby." "Thank you, sir," she said, her fingers trembling as she took it. She gently wiped Grace's face and wrapped her more securely. The silence in the car was heavy, but not uncomfortable. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily Carter." "And where do you live?" Emily looked down. We don't have a place, sir. We've been sleeping outside, wherever we find shelter." Jonathan didn't show shock. He simply nodded slowly. Then he looked out the window, deep in thought, and said quietly, "We're going to get you both something warm to eat, then somewhere safe." Emily stared at him, eyes wide. "Truly, sir?" He looked at her again. "Yes, you're not alone anymore." The SUV pulled up in front of a small, neat restaurant tucked between a pharmacy and a tailoring shop just off Ojaleba Road. Jonathan stepped out first, ignoring the fact that his shoes were soaked and his blazer clung to his arms. He turned to Emily, who was now clutching baby Grace protectively, and offered her his hand. "Come," he said, "let's get you both warm." Emily stepped out slowly. The smell of food drifted from the restaurant, and her stomach twisted in response. She hadn't eaten properly in 2 days. Grace stirred softly in her arms, and Emily kissed the baby's cheek. For a moment, just standing there with a stranger who offered kindness without reason, she felt the burden lift ever so slightly. Inside, the restaurant was quiet. Only a few early customers sat and sipping tea or flipping through newspapers. Jonathan walked straight to a corner booth and gestured for Emily to sit. She did, carefully placing Grace in her lap. A waitress approached, her eyes moving curiously between the pair. "Hot jollof rice," Jonathan ordered, "with plantain, fried chicken, and please, a cup of warm milk, also clean water." "Yes, sir," the waitress replied and disappeared. Emily sat at the edge of the cushioned seat, unsure if she was allowed to relax. Her fingers played with the edge of her wrapper. When the food came, she looked up at Jonathan. "Can I eat here, sir?" "Yes," he nodded. "Eat, please." She unwrapped Grace gently and fed her the warm milk first. The baby drank slowly, sleepily. Then Emily began to eat slow, unsure bites at first, then faster. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks as the rice and plantain filled her mouth. She hadn't tasted anything this good in so long. Jonathan watched her quietly. He didn't interrupt, didn't ask questions. He just waited. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and looked up. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Thank you, sir. God bless you. I don't know why you stopped, but thank you." Jonathan leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "Tell me, how did you end up like this?" Emily's eyes dropped to Grace, who had drifted off to sleep in her arms. She hesitated for a long time, then spoke. "My life, it hasn't been easy. My parents died in an accident when I was 11. I was raised in a church orphanage in Ibadan. It was hard, but I learned to survive. I cleaned, cooked, worked in people's houses. Then I met Henry." Jonathan didn't move. He listened. Henry was a cab driver from Togo, kind, soft-spoken. After a year, he promised we'd marry. When I got pregnant, he was happy, or at least he seemed to be. He said he needed to travel home, tell his family. "Tradition," he said. That was the last time I saw him. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. "He left?" Emily nodded, wiping her face. "His number stopped going through. I waited for days, then weeks, then months. I lost my job, lost the room I was staying in. Nobody would hire a pregnant woman without a place to stay." She kissed Grace's forehead and whispered, "She's all I have now." Jonathan felt a deep stillness in his chest. He looked at this young woman, clearly educated, clearly strong, and saw a story that never got the chance to be heard. He reached into his wallet and placed several crisp, narrow notes on the table. "Take this," he said. "It's not a solution, but it's something. Use it for you and Grace." Emily stared at the money. Her hands shook. "Sir, this is too much. I can't." "Take it," Jonathan repeated gently. "You need it." She picked the money and held it against her chest. Then she bowed her head, unable to speak. Jonathan checked his watch, and his heart sank. The meeting, he was already late. Still, he had no regrets. He pulled out a sleek business card from his wallet and handed it to her. "Call me after 3 hours," he said. "I'll come back and take you somewhere safe." Emily took the card like it was gold. She nodded. "Thank you, sir." But she didn't know that this one small card would soon become her greatest loss. After the meal, Emily sat in the quiet corner of the restaurant for a long while, gently rocking Grace, who was now asleep. The food had revived her, but the weight of her life still hung over her like a wet cloak. She looked again at the sleek business card Jonathan had given her. It was white and elegant, with his full name, Jonathan Blake, embossed in silver letters, alongside a direct phone number. She had no phone, but she had a plan. "I'll go back to the corner where he found me," she whispered to Grace. "When it's time, I'll pay someone to use their phone to call him. He said he'll come." Emily folded the card and carefully tucked it into a tiny inner pocket sewn into Grace's baby shirt. She touched the spot to make sure it was safe, then wrapped the sleeping child close to her chest. With a deep breath and a small prayer, she stepped out of the restaurant. The rain had stopped. The clouds were beginning to break apart, and a shy Lagos sun peeked through. Emily flagged down a small yellow bus and squeezed in beside a woman carrying a basket of peppers. As the bus rattled along the potholed road, she kept checking to make sure Grace was still warm, still asleep, and that the card was still safely hidden. But fate is cruel in quiet ways. As she stepped down from the bus at her stop, the card, a lifeline printed on glossy paper, slipped silently from Grace's shirt pocket. It fluttered to the wet pavement unnoticed, trampled seconds later by passing feet. Emily didn't know. She walked back to the very corner where Jonathan had first found her that morning. She saw the same rusted umbrella stand, the same tiny shop with its faded Coke sign. The owner was gone, but the shade remained. She sat on the wooden bench and waited. Back in Ikoyi, Jonathan's meeting had finally ended. The investors were impressed. His company was about to double its value, but his mind was elsewhere. He checked his phone again. No missed calls. It was almost 4 hours since he had handed Emily the card. He frowned and stared at his phone. Did she forget? Was she not serious? Did she throw the card away? His assistant came in with documents, but he waved them off. "Later," he muttered. Then, as if possessed by instinct, he stood up and said to his driver, "Take me back to that restaurant, the one from this morning." The black SUV pulled into the same street where they had stopped before. Jonathan stepped out quickly, his eyes scanning the sidewalk, the entrance, the drainage beside the road. Nothing. No sign of Emily. But then, just near the gutter by the restaurant's door, something caught his eye. It was the card. His card. Soggy, dirty, but unmistakably his. He bent down, picked it up, and stared. "Did she drop it? Or did she toss it away?" he whispered. Inside, he sat at the same booth, ordered rice and chicken out of habit, and stared at the card as it lay damp on the table. Meanwhile, across town, Emily was still seated at the same roadside bench, thinking the card was safely tucked inside Grace's clothes. "I'll wait," she whispered, "until it's time to call him." She had no idea the card was already gone. And Jonathan had no idea she was still waiting, just streets away. Emily sat beneath the same shade where Jonathan had first seen her. The sun was high now, and the roadside bustled with activity. Hawkers sold puff-puff and sachets of water. Kiki drivers called out destinations. Children chased after a stray ball across the street. But Emily barely noticed. Her eyes stayed fixed on every black SUV that passed, hoping no, praying that Jonathan would appear. She reached into Grace's tiny shirt, gently feeling for the card. Her fingers searched the inner pocket. Nothing. Her breath caught. She checked again frantically, now shaking the little cloth, unwrapping Grace carefully. Still nothing. Her heart sank. "No, no, no," she whispered. Her eyes widened with panic. She stood up and searched the ground around her feet. She opened her wrapper and checked every seam, every fold. But the card was gone, completely gone. Tears gathered in her eyes, hot and stinging. She sat back down slowly, rocking Grace. "I lost it," she cried softly. I lost the only chance we had. A part of her broke in that moment. Across town, inside the restaurant, Jonathan sat quietly. The waitress brought his food and smiled politely, but he barely looked up. His gaze stayed fixed on the now dried card on the table. Oh no, one voice in his head said, she used you. She didn't want help. She just took the money and left. But the other voice, the one buried deeper in his gut, whispered something else. She lost it. She tried. She's still out there.